Hi, and thank you for coming to listen to my tribute speech. These are my audience members, and here are my index cards, and here's my student ID. Without further ado, let's begin. Have you ever felt like a deck of cards in the game of life and the odds were stacked against you? Like you could not win and just wanted to give up? I think I can confidently say almost every person has had this feeling, at least once in their lifetime. The feeling that whatever you're trying to do or work on or improve is impossible. Like I said, we have all had this gut-wrenching feeling. But my great-grandma, Granny as we called her, taught me growing up, no matter what kind of hardships you're going through, there's always a solution, and that failure only happens when you stop trying. Born in Douglas, Georgia in 1918 on a farm, Granny, whose given name was Wilma Batten, was the eldest of 5 children in her family. All of the children were able to attend school and also had to help on the family farm. However, once the Great Depression began, things at the farm got really bad. Granny, being the oldest, had to leave school after the 8th grade to work on the farm with her parents to make sure the family didn't starve during this time. All of her sisters and brothers were able to keep attending school and all were able to graduate. I recall Granny saying she used to squat down in a field as she was plowing and cry when the school bus came to pick up her siblings because she loved learning so much and wasn't able to go. Throughout my years in school, I've heard kids complain and find excuses not to go to school, but imagine not even having that opportunity. Most people would just accept this lost experience, but not Granny. She went back to high school and graduated at the age of 78. This is something that meant a lot to not only her, but the community that surrounded her. She was interviewed by the local newspapers and television stations for dedication and persistence to graduate school. Granny was not only persistent when it came to school, but as well as her family life. She wanted children very badly, but unfortunately her husband didn't. So what did Granny do? She divorced him. This was not a normal thing to do in the late 1930s, but she knew what she wanted and she went for it. She remarried, moved to Tampa with her husband Joel, and got pregnant with her very first daughter. Sadly, the birth of her daughter almost killed her, and it killed her baby girl. The doctors told her that she would never be able to have children. Granny decided that she would put her trust in God and go ahead and try and have children. The pregnancies were not easy, but Granny was able to have 4 children successfully, which is why I am here today. All of the children were born 2 years apart, and when her youngest was 2 years old, she divorced my grandfather. My great-grandfather was unfaithful and abusive to my Granny, and she decided she was not accepting this any longer. Most people even today, stay in abusive relationships because of their children and the fact that it's too difficult to leave that situation. This was in the year 1953, and divorce was not an accepted practice. There was not child support or alimony during these times as there is today. My Granny raised all 4 children alone on an 8th grade education. Her children were 8, 6, 4, and 2 when she divorced. She got 2 jobs, and though the times were tough, she made it work. Many people would rely on the government to care for them, but not Granny. She planted her own garden, pinched her own pennies, and canned her own food. Eventually she remarried, but her new husband was seldom home, as he was a merchant marine and was lost at sea. Women were not really encouraged to work during this time, and the types of employment my Granny was able to secure was an elevator operator for a department store in downtown Tampa, as well as a factory worker for Hava Tampa Cigar Company, where she operated a machine that rolled cigars. Granny was injured on the job in her late 50s when she had her hand caught in a machine, almost losing her thumb. Many people would not have gone back to work, fearing them working a machine again, or perhaps having a lawsuit. But after a successful surgery, Granny was back at work until she retired from there. Granny's children graduated high school, and her boys enlisted in the military as was required during this time. Granny's eldest son was involved in a single car accident and killed. I'm not a parent, but I can't imagine having to bury my child at the age of 21. This is the same age I am right now. Many parents would not be able to recover from a loss like this, but Granny carried on, with dignity and grace. Another terrible loss that Granny faced with strength and courage was the loss of her father. Granny always said her father died of cancer. In actuality, he went into the family barn and committed suicide. But the subject of suicide was taboo back in those days. I think this is one of the reasons Granny was a volunteer at our local hospital. She wanted to try and help people who were sick and suffering. Granny had many setbacks and losses in her life, but she always kept her faith in God, a positive attitude, and didn't look back. Granny also cared for her grandchildren, all 7 of them, on weekends and then after retiring. Babysat her 4 grandchildren until they attended preschool. Granny loved children so much, she got a part-time job at a local preschool, where she was Granny to everyone. It was during this time that she started thinking about her lost education. Granny went to the local high school at night, attending mostly with teenage kids, who quickly took to her and also called her Granny. She was voted Student of the Month and even got a class ring. I was 10 years old when my Granny passed away in her sleep at 92 years old. At Granny's funeral, there were so many people from so many different lives that she touched. The place was overflowing. It was incredible to see, but not surprising. Granny wasn't rich, famous, nor did she make a famous discovery. What Granny knew was how to live a rich life and how to make lemonade out of lemons. Thank you.